Alright, so here we are with our video response to Coach Red Pill, which actually isn't something I normally do. I don't normally make video responses to other, dare I say, red pilled content. I don't know why I did that. No, but I think he's wrong here, and I actually really like this video because I think it's a really good example of what I was talking about in the previous video. If you didn't watch it, it was about why women have no honor and no integrity. And at the end of the video, I said that it seems like some people usually defend or hand wave the criticism that we should adhere or we should give women these type of principles or hold their feet to the fire, basically. And Coach Red Pill, I think, is one of the best examples because he's actually not doing it for the reasons I laced in the video. In the video, I laced that people are oftentimes trying to protect women. Coach Red Pill isn't really so much trying to protect women, actually not even at all, which is what makes his video, I think, all the more, what's what I'm looking for? Potent. If not potent, makes a really good, one of the best examples of what I'm talking about when I say people hand wave the criticism of women should have principles or standards, honor and integrity, basically. So I'm going to do this video a little differently. His video originally is 25 minutes long, so I'm not going to go through every single point. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to interlace the core of his arguments in my video so you guys get an idea of where he's coming from, and I'm going to try to explain his examples as quickly, as efficiently as possible, because his examples are really what makes his video very long, but his actual arguments are actually very, very simple. So I want you guys to, see where he's coming from, but I don't want you guys to be here all day. So, of course, I encourage you to watch his entire video in its entirety, at some point in time, if you have the time, so you guys know that I'm not trying to misrepresent him. I don't need to misrepresent him. I think what he's actually saying is what needs to be argued against. So, like I said, watch this whole video if you want the whole context, but I'm not going to be playing every single point. So with that being said, Coach Red Pill is going to take us away with pretty much his first example and where we're starting off at.
Case, I've never ever felt angry about this lack of loyalty or lack of loyalty to principles. No, because I understand women. And you know how I understood women, where it came from? From two things. Learning about the history of the Mongol Empire and the Nature Channel. Let me explain. See, years ago, years and years ago, I don't remember when, but I was watching the Nature Channel, right? It must have been when I was like in my 20s or something like that, right? And they were showing lions. And they were showing these lions and how, there was the one lion, male lion, and, a bunch of female lions and a bunch of cubs, right? And what happened was that an alpha lion, an up-and-coming alpha lion, came up and fought the alpha lion of this particular pride and defeated him. And so the new lion was in charge of the pride, right? And what he did is he proceeded to murder all of the cubs of the pride, right? He murdered them all. Because, of course, he didn't want to be raising some other lion's cubs, right? So he murdered all of the cubs that couldn't run away or defend themselves, right? And what happened with the female lions of the pride? Did they object? No, they didn't object. What did they do? They went into heat. They wanted to fuck the new lion, right? Which I thought was just like bizarre, Bizarre until I realized that I was looking at it through a male morality.
Now, point of fact number one, there isn't really so much of anything as I could even consider a male morality as just a human morality, because animals just, within their nature, just don't have a moral framework. In order to have a moral framework, you have to have the capacity to think rationally, and more than anything else, you have to have the capacity to delay gratification and the capacity to act in spite of how you feel. Animals, they don't normally have, most animals don't have that. So the idea that you are even applying morality to an animal is off, because even though humans are animals, technically, we are incredibly special as animals, and more than anything else, more importantly than anything else, we're different fucking animals. So trying to compare and contrast what human females do to what female lionesses do is just off, because more than anything else, I'm not even sure you could take what happens with female lionesses and apply it to any other feline let alone any other species of any other animal anyway. That does seem to be, as far as I know, a particularly lioness thing to do. That seems that that's what lions do in their prides, rather than it seems like any female and any species would do at all. Obviously, brown bears don't do that, sea turtles don't do that, and human females certainly don't do that. You cannot walk into any woman's house, kill her husband, and then kill her children, and then that woman will spread her legs to you. I mean, maybe there is some woman you could find with the snuff fantasy, some woman somewhere with a weird fetish somewhere. Maybe you can. Humans are diverse and creepy and crazy and all these kinks. Maybe you could find one. But most women in the history of humanity, I'm going to say, you probably could not do that to them, and they would just be, no, okay, I'm happy about this. Yeah, alright, I can do it. You especially can't do it nowadays. In fact, maybe if you look into human history, which we will in just a second, by the way, but in modernity, in modern times, this example is just incredibly extreme because most women are not going to operate even remotely close to this moral framework where you could destroy their family and then they'll latch on to someone else. What most women typically do is they will monkey branch in between different guys up higher social ladders. It's normally what they would do when you look at their, impropriety, when you look at their lack of being able to stay loyal and commit to men. It's not normally an extreme case as this, older, more alpha guy, so to speak, comes in and just knocks her husband out of the picture. And it doesn't normally seem to be the case. It seems to be totally within the control of the woman. And that's completely different. Because if you look at the example of the lioness, it's entirely possible that the lioness does not want to do this. I mean, maybe they might go into heat. Maybe you might chemically see this. Maybe that could happen. I don't know. I haven't seen any studies. But it's entirely possible that the lioness only accepts the rule of this tyranny of this new alpha male lion because she herself just can't fight them. And some people might say, well, I mean, if you have like 4 or 5 lionesses, they can just bum rush the male lion and then kill him and go. Yeah, they could do that in the same way that whenever an active shooter walks into a mall or walks into a school, everyone can just bum rush him and then take him out. But you, of course, see the issue there. No one wants to be the person to get shot, and I'm pretty sure the lioness don't want to be the person that gets their eyes clawed out against the male lion. So people would rather preserve themselves, or at least try to preserve themselves, and this is animals more than anything else, rather than try to get rule of the tyranny that is in front of them. That seems to be pretty consistent animal nature that you can apply between humans and lions. It does seem to be the case. However, this extreme example of women going into heat after watching the man murder her children, that doesn't really seem to be reasonable or the case. But now we're going to move forward and talk about his example from the Mongolian Empire, because this one actually is about humans and watching their husbands getting killed in front of them. So maybe I just contradicted myself. Or did I? Let's see.
And so I thought to myself, why would I, as a man, and the human beings around me, why would we be any different?
Because we're different animals. That's why we would be different. I mean, do lions record themselves on cameras and then upload the footage onto the internet? I mean, you gotta think for a couple of seconds here, dude.
Of course, because you see, we human beings are animals. Yeah, we're no different from, the lions and the whales and the chimpanzees and the insects and whatever the fuck.
No, we are. Because those are lions and those are chimpanzees and those are whales. We are humans. We are ipso facto different from them. I mean, there are some similarities you can find between different animals. There's similarities you can find between different animals in the same class or in the same species. But, I mean, when you're talking about 2 completely different species of creatures that are like leagues apart, well, it just wouldn't be rational or reasonable to apply what you can find with them into someone else. You don't compare the behaviors of a lion to the behaviors of a penguin, and it would be equally as strange to compare the behaviors of lions to humans.
But the point is, see, Genghis Khan, his wife was kidnapped. And she was kidnapped by some raiders, and she adjusted to life with these raiders, right? And she may have been raped, so she claimed later, but more likely than not, she wasn't merely raped. She probably copulated them because, she was now their possession. She was now in their control. And so what was she going to do about it, right? She was just going to make do with what she had. And so she was there in this camp, and then Genghis Khan came around and rescued her, quote unquote, and took her back. And maybe he got her pregnant, maybe she was pregnant before. It was never really known. And this was actually a source of great political tension later on, decades later, but that's not important. That's not the point. The point is, see, that Genghis Khan's wife, she fucked some other guys, right? Because she had to. Because what was she going to do? Because she had been captured, and if she didn't just simply have sex with them, they were just going to continue to rape her violently. And so, she made peace with the situation. Of course, that's not what the history books say, but you can read between the lines. I mean, we're all adults. We all recognize the situation, what happened. She made peace with the situation, and then when Genghis Khan rescued her, she went back to him, right? That's what happened. Now, you look at prehistory in the literal sense, in the sense of history before it was written down, and we see archaeological evidence of raids on this camp by this other camp, right? And these raids, what would they do? They would usually kill the men and the boys and steal the women and the girls, right? And they would presumably rape them, but eventually, it wasn't just a thing of violently raping them. These women would just have to make peace with the situation, right?
What's really funny about this is I actually made a similar point way back when to one of my friends. When I said, and I actually had the same train of logic, I thought to myself, well, if a woman was kidnapped into an environment like this, like back in antiquity, she probably wasn't really raped. Why? Because eventually what I was saying was, I don't think that the men who kidnapped her would need to force her to have sex, because at some point she would just acclimate to the environment, or at some point, she would just realize that in order to live, she just have to have sex with them. And then I posted this to my friend, and he said, Zarius, I think you've been taking way too many red pills, because if your options are have sex and die, yeah, you're getting raped. Let's not pretend that this is the environment that she really wanted to be in. Maybe they didn't, and what I was trying to communicate was, I didn't think that they had to hold her down and force her to have sex, but then at the same time, like I said, you got a sword to her. You don't really need to at that point, and that's what I was missing. And I think this is what Coach Red Pill is missing here too. It's entirely possible that these women could have developed Stockholm Syndrome at some point, and that's certainly a topic unto itself. But more than likely, what's more reasonable is the fact that, yeah, these women probably, after they watch their family get killed and murdered, they don't really become wet with the fantasies of watching that raider have sex with them. What's probably more than likely is the fact that they want to preserve themselves, that they want to preserve their life, so they do what they have to do to survive. That seems to be more than likely the case, rather than these women are choosing. And this is why it's fundamentally different, by the way, because the actions of women in modernity that are reflecting their lack of morality and their lack of loyalty is them choosing. But if these women are watching their families be killed and they have no ability to fight back or do anything, that's not a choice. That's not a lack of honor. That's not a lack of integrity. It's not a lack of moral principles. If your family is killed in front of you and then you're raped, that's a whole bunch of awful things happening and occurring to you. And you can be the most morally righteous woman there, but if you're being raped, you're being forced to have sex by definition of the word. It's not in your control. But cheating on your husband is in your control. Choosing to leave this man for another guy that's got more money is in your control. Your hypergamy, moving up, monkey branching between different guys, is in your control. And that is why this example is fundamentally totally asinine in comparison to the modernity. It's not just simply because of how extreme it is, it's simply because it's not even the same thing. You're talking about women being forced to go live with people that killed their family versus women choosing to leave their family for a better life. That's just not the same thing. Just not. I don't really think I need to explain any more than that.
Because this is how it is. This is how human beings were. And it's an ugly truth, but it is the truth, right? These women, these girls, they would be kidnapped by some competing party, some competing tribe or what have you. They would perhaps initially be raped, or perhaps the women would just reconcile themselves to the reality of the situation that they'd been captured, and now they would be the women of this other tribe. And so they would make do with what they had. And this was the natural order of things, okay? And so from an evolutionary perspective, it made sense for women to simply adapt to their new situation. Adapt to their new situation so as to minimize their own pain and misery and suffering.
Now, again, under the assumption that this was the case, that this was evolutionary, I don't know. First of all, evolutionary psychology is a problem unto itself because it's post hoc rationalization. It's basically looking at the end result of something and then working it back based on that, rather than looking at how something formed without its, without the conditions. So, evil psych, you can basically rationalize anything by working it backwards is kind of the ultimate problem with evolutionary psychology. But more importantly than that, if you take a look again at the extreme example of what we are talking about, again, they just don't mix and they just don't match. You're talking about women being forced to, you're talking about women watching their family get killed in front of them and then being kidnapped and stolen away as somehow some rationalization or justification or some evolutionary instinct for women to throw away their husbands and their families purposefully and consciously and moving away to get a better deal. That's just not the same thing. I can't really explain any more than that.
Now, is this depressing? Is this, is this soul crushing somehow? Is this like the end of the world? Does this mean to yourself that, you could never have any kind of relationship with a woman? No, it doesn't mean that,
Yes. Yes, that's like literally exactly what that means. That fundamentally, what you're preaching, fundamentally within the nature of any sort of monogamous, or any relationship for that matter, if women cannot be loyal, if they cannot adhere to their principles, if they're only adhering to their principles simply for in-group preference and whatever, then functionally it is impossible within the nature and definition of any monogamous relationship, whether it's sexual or just friendship, you cannot be friends or have a relationship with a woman. Functionally. Because friendship and relationships require loyalty. They require steadfastness. That's what makes you fucking friends. You keep seeing each other. You trust each other. You give things to each other. You help each other. And if you can't trust that woman to do anything for you, you cannot, in any functional way, have a relationship with her. Yes, Coach Red Pill, that is literally exactly what you are saying. I don't even... what even is the further counterpoint to that? Oh, let's find out. Keep going.
Necessarily depressing. It's funny, as far as I'm concerned. Why is it funny? Because it makes people predictable.
Wait. What?
See, when something happens, right, and it's out of the blue, that's a tragedy, right? But when you see something happening and you can predict how it's going to be, it's funny. Why is it funny? Because you can predict it and you can get ahead of the situation, right?
Wait, let me get this one straight. So, predicting that a woman will eventually leave me is funny because I knew she was going to leave me anyway. So I preemptively create a situation or a scenario where I know she's going to leave me, so I'm not burned by it. Why would I go through all this Machiavellian bullshit when I can just not date the woman at all? In fact, why would I be dating the woman at all if I think she's going to leave me eventually? Why would I invest any amount of my time in a woman that I think is going to leave me eventually? I mean, the long and short answer is I wouldn't if I was rational in any capacity.
And any failure in that kind of situation, it's not the failure of the woman in this case, right? It's your failure.
What I said at the top of the hour. Whenever you try to adhere or give women some type of moral principle, it gets hand-waved.
The only guys who bitch and moan about women and say that they're lacking in principles and they're disloyal and all the rest of it, blah, 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 are the guys who, for whatever reason, fail to anticipate what women are going to do, fail to predict what they are going to do. Quite frankly, these guys, they're pretty much morons. Oh yeah, don't get me wrong, they could have like a lot of IQ points. They can be fucking geniuses for all I care, right? But they're fucking idiots because they are not looking at women qua women. They are imposing their own standards on the women.
It's your fault. You can't read. You didn't read the future. You didn't predict it with your Sharingan. It's your fault that the woman has no principles and morals, because you should have expected that she would be a cruel, evil human being. The fuck? No. And you see, my friends, this is why I felt the need to make this video. Mostly because it's not even that I even disagree. Like, you've noticed I've cut a huge portion of it off. There's no point responding to it, because I think they kind of agree with some of the things he's saying. And more than that, it's just not even important in this video anyway. But the reason why I feel the need to make this video is because, again, I don't think that we as men should accept this behavior from women. We should not accept that women have no principles and women have no loyalty. We should not play their game. If you encounter a woman that has no loyalty, that has no morality, you shouldn't become a manipulative bastard and use her for your own ends. That just makes you the same as her. And thus you can't even complain that she doesn't even have it. There's not even any frustration to be had because you're equally as cruel as she is. Don't play her game. Be a righteous, be moral, be a good person. If you don't want to be that type of man, if you don't want to be that type of person, don't fucking listen to this bullcrap here and just like assume all women are going to be this way, or just assume they have no loyalty. If they really don't, fucking force them to. Make that your principle. You have to put your foot down and say, listen, I don't like the way the world is, so I'm not going to play into it. And this is why I want to make this video. And I probably might make another video where I talk about this topic specifically. But here right now, listen, I don't think that this type of behavior should ever in any circumstance be accepted. And we should not hand wave this off by simply saying it is the nature of woman, as if evolution is not a thing. If evolution is an organism's ability to survive and reproduce and adapt to an environment, then you guys need to make women adapt to the environment, that they need to be loyal and they need to have principles. That's what that should be. You need to start selecting and putting in the effort into finding these women. And if you can't find them, you starve them out. If you can't find them, then you focus on yourself. You be a better person. But this Mickey Mouse bullshit here where we have to manipulate each other just so you can get your dick wet is just foolishness and should not be fucking paid into. With that being said, I actually hope you guys got something out of today's video. And if you did, man, go and click the like button. And shoot, go and click that subscribe button. Comment in the comment box below. And as always, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.